And good evening, everybody. Welcome to an all-new episode of Holotheatre. As always, I am Dan Tartaglione, also known as the Tartag1. Tonight, we got some special guests. First of all, my co-host and Holotheatre host and hero, Garrett Larson, coming to you live from cold Minnesota. And then joining me to the bottom left of me is, you know him if you play out in Minnesota, or I'm sorry, Massachusetts. I've got too many M states on the brain. You also know him as the taller of the two Hunter brothers, Eric Hunter. And then below me is the man from Pennsylvania but likes the Baltimore Orioles for some reason, Ryan Saracen. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing good.
Yeah, doing great.
So thank you guys for joining us tonight. Tonight we're going to... it's all about deck building. So we're going to get into like the news. We'll go into our normal news segments and everything. And afterwards, we're going to get into talking about deck building, what makes a good deck builder, some of the tips, tricks, and just suggestions on how to become a better deck builder. And then we're going to actually review. We've got 5 user submitted decks that we're going to present to the 3 of you, and as well as myself. I mean, I've got nothing good to say, but we're going to look at some of those decks. We're going to go over them, and we're going to maybe improve upon them. So, but as I stated earlier, let's go ahead and talk about what is going on in the Star Wars CCG world. So first of all, I think we're in round 2/3 of the GEMP PC. It's been an exciting little tournament so far. So, that unfortunately is my predictions, not the actual tournament. Nobody wants to see who I predicted. So people already making it to round 3 include Kieran, Ryan Jelson, Sam Tashima, Brad Kipple, Greg Shaw, Chris Goglin, Chris Werfs, Matt Harrison Trainer, Stimpy over Garrett. Shaking my head at you, Garrett. Connor Britton.
Yeah, that just happened.
Justin Miyashiro. Dennis Reinhardt. Kyle Kruger. Jared Napolitano. Kyle Kalin. And Timo Dussel and Gemp Tom Struther. Tom looks like he's the first person to get to the 4th round. I don't know if you guys all watched that game from I think it was yesterday.
That was nuts. Yeah.
But that game was game 1 was kind of interesting. I know I talked to Timo. He felt like Tom put him directly on Echo Base Operation, but game 2 was definitely where all the action was. A crazy, it could be worse into it's worse into a sense, followed by a control set for stun. I know Scott Lingrell was definitely falling out of his chair after all of that.
I didn't believe that he spent all 15 force on that. It could be worse.
He did.
And then
crazy.
and then he was, as soon as I saw that control, I was like, oh, that makes sense. That was awesome.
And then
that was kind of nuts.
And I think he ended up losing by 1 point of life force. I think if they would have tied, based on loss piles, Timo would have ended up winning.
Wow. So he shouldn't have deployed Vader then.
No, that or he should have got out battle order.
I mean, that would have helped too.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and then going into February is the first month of the OCS. Looks like we've got a few players already finishing up the 12 games, including Casey, Tom, Connor Britton, and Timo. No surprises on Timo finishing all 12 games, but Casey and Tom are currently 1st and 2nd. And then behind them are Kyle Kruger, Connor, and Timo running out the top 5. Ryan Jelson, Jeff Levine, and our friendly neighborhood Batmouse all are sitting at X and O. With Batmouse and Jeff sitting at 3 and 0. And then we've got a bunch of players a little bit down the line. Eric, you're sitting at 1 and 0. Ryan, I don't see you on the list.
I haven't started yet. Too early. Too early in the month.
No, it's not. You should have had your games done by now.
Nah, I changed the last week.
That was actually the first OCS game I played in over a year.
Oh,
I took
wow.
I took last year off, and I can't remember how much I played in. I think I only did like a month or two the year before that.
That's crazy.
So we'll see how much I can play.
I have faith.
It's fun though.
I have faith. And then just in 10 days, Online Play Week will be coming up out again. All you got to do is, like we've been saying, just play a game on GIMP. Play a few games on GIMP. Why not? Play your OCS game. Play an Open League. Play in the Retro League. Play any event, and you'll get yourself some cool AI foils, including a Lord Sidious hologram AI. And then in March 31st through April 2nd, Garrett is going to be hosting U.S. Nationals out in Minnesota. So get your plane tickets booked, get your hotel booked, and go out to Minnesota, play some Star Wars cards, have some fun, and see some good people.
The hotel, I'll do the 5-minute quick sell while we talk about this real quick. The hotel booking link is on the forums. We did listen to some player feedback. We're at a Hilton about 5 to 10 minutes from Mall of America, but a little bit less expensive rooms than we've had in the past at times. Definitely a chunk cheaper than the Hyatt has been. After the positive feedback from Worlds in Atlanta, we're going to have 2 game rooms the same way Atlanta did. Should be more than enough space for everybody who comes in, but it'll be really nice for splitting, like on Sunday, where we're going to have the consolation in one room and we can have top 8 in the other and keep things a little quieter for those top 8 players, so it's not quite as just overwhelming noise, and just, give us a little more space to spread out, a little bit easier to kind of separate and see where it goes. So it should be a good time.
Well, I will say I wish I was going to be there. Okay. And then I've been saying it for a while, but you know what? I'm not going to say it until everybody does it. Please donate to the PC. That's the only way that all these wonderful programs that we do, these tournaments, everything that we do gets funded. So, and get yourself some cool deck boxes on the way too.
I've got 2 heading my way at some point.
Yeah, rub it in. And then,
do you know how popular the new wave of new series of deck boxes have been, or like which ones have been the most popular?
I want to say Boba is the most popular.
Boba one is super sweet. Yeah.
Personally, I think the Thrawn one and Hera are my favorites.
Really like BB-8.
I mean, everybody's got their.
The orange is nice.
I mean,
BB-8 and Emperor were mine. That orange is just too nice.
Yeah, I really like the BB-8, and then I think the Grievous one looks super cool.
I like how we all have a different one. I mean, BB-8. I mean,
That's
all 3 of you like BB-8, but
I mean, the fact that we all like different ones just tells you how awesome the graphics team is doing. Like the fact that all of us are like, all of these are great, is, the work the volunteers are putting in with the resources the PC gets from the donations is just so huge and so nice to,
and
keep the game going and keep things fun.
And speaking of volunteers, this just in from our rules advocate, Greg Zinn. The V-Kit and Scomplink have both been updated, so now you can actually search by underlying card. So say if you want to like search for like My Father Before Me, but you can't. But you don't remember the exact name of the card, but you know what it's underneath. Just type in. So you can actually search that way, and it will come up that. So and it will tell you what the underlying card is for each one. And then same with Scomplink. So Scomplink tells you, like for Bargaining Table, it tells you what the underlying card is for. Alien Rabble, Ancient Watering Hole, Steady, and Bargaining Table. Just 2 great examples. And then we also have the advanced search has been updated as well. So great job on that. It just keeps getting better.
As someone who was a returning player, a year and a half ago and dealing with, I could look at the pictures and identify the card, but didn't know the V-slip. I love that so much. The work that went into that and bringing back the game for people who missed a chunk of time, it's huge for us to just look at it and be like, all right, what card is that?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, if you remember the underlying card image.
Yeah. I remember at least once pulling up GEMP and just scrolling for light side interrupts because I knew the picture was the signal, but I couldn't read the text for See You Around Kid. So I just had to scroll and scroll and scroll until like, there it is. So I'm so happy they did that. Thank you so much, volunteers.
But I think at this point, let's get into the meat and potatoes of our show tonight. We're going to all hear about, it's been asked on Slack, it's been asked on the forums before, how do you become a better deck builder? We brought in Team 5 deck builder extraordinaire and Moneyball deck builder extraordinaire, Eric Hunter and Ryan Saracen, to talk about how to become a better deck builder, what some of the tips and tricks that they use when they build a deck. And they're also here going to answer some questions. Hopefully, if you got any questions in the chat, I'll relay those to them as well. And then, like I said, we got 5 different decks that people showed that say they sent in, and we'll take a look at those, go over those, find out ways to improve upon them, just to think of like a different idea, and maybe some of these stuff will help you, the deck builders. So, first, why don't we get into it and actually say a little bit about yourself? So we'll start with Eric. Why don't we go and say a little bit about you, and then we'll go into Ryan.
Sure. Yeah, I played a lot when I was a kid, like over, I don't know, 20 years ago. And then I took like a 17 or 18 year break or something. And then recently got back into it. I've been, as many of you know, Hayes Hunter is my older brother, and we started playing the game together. And if you listen to his interview on the Kessling run, we were kind of best friends and worst enemies when we were playing, because we were each other's best competition for a number of years. And recently I've joined up with Team 5, of which Hayes is a member as well, along with Joe and Kyle and Phil and Cal and Z and a number of other people. And it's been fun to kind of collaborate with him for the first time. So yeah, I unfortunately work a lot and have other commitments, so I'm not playing as much as I did a couple of years ago, and definitely not as much as I did 20 years ago, but it's been a lot of fun to continue to play. And I actually spend a lot more time building decks than playing them. I don't know how many decks I've built, and then I post in Team 5 chats like, here's a weird idea, and then someone else will run with it.
Okay. Ryan, what about you? Let's talk about some of you, what you've done, and then let's talk about like some of your deck exploits.
Well, I don't have the history of Eric and a lot of others in the community. I came back in 2017. And when I say came back, I never really played in the old days either. I was more a collector. So that was really where I got my start. It was about the same time that GEMP was spinning up and getting most of the cards on there. So that was a really nice resource to have. And yeah, ever since day one, I just kind of always liked trying to build something new, taking net decks and trying to be a little more creative and find a different spin on it, put in some cards that otherwise people might not think about. I certainly want to say I'm the best deck builder on my team. That's the other Ryan Jellison. You can top 8 worlds with Gungans. You're doing something right. He certainly comes up with some more creative stuff than I do, but I think between the two of us and Jared and Connor and Matt and the others, we have a good collaboration going, and we'll all throw ideas out. Like Eric, I think I spend more time actually building in GEMP and just trying to build stuff usually most of it's bad and throws away before I ever or gets thrown away before I play a game with it. But it's fun to try to build new concepts and see if they'll work or not.
I will say this: like you say that Ryan is the other Ryan Jelson is the better deck builder. I don't know. Like I've never seen Ryan Jelson play the ASP droids.
I'm sure he has at some point. But yeah, that was I guess my most recent exploit at San Diego was I played Yavin 4 Ops for a long time. It's probably my favorite light side. I wanted to put a little bit of a spin on it for San Diego. I was looking at some of the matchups like CCT and ROPS, where they're quick to get out starfighters that can touch your space.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got a couple X-Wing cannons, but it'd really be good if there's a better way to pull them or a way to get them faster. Rapid fire is a card, but it could be sensed or canceled other ways. I was like, what about a device that pulls weapons? Looked around Scomplink a bit, found portable scanners. I can run a couple of those and put it on Dodonna and grab my weapons. While I'm at it, let me put in an ASP droid and I can put 6 back on top of my deck and draw it for Destiny.
That's insane.
Yeah,
I was going to go all out with R2 and fire extinguishers and a battleground sight, but the rest of my team stopped me before I got too far off the ledge.
I mean, I can understand why your team would want to stop you because they want you to do well. But
yeah, it did go 4-1, I think, so it did okay.
I gotta ask, how did the deck go for you?
At the Yavin 4, it was 4-1 over the 2 days.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's actually really good.
The one loss was to Connor's Walker deck, so I was
everybody loses to
happy to
Connor's
take
Walker
that one.
deck.
Yeah.
Okay.
I gotta say, Ryan, I kind of forgot about this deck because I already moved on from it. But I recently made a bring them before me device deck, where I start reactor terminal, and I played 12 devices, all like 8 of the droid detectors and like 4 collars. And then I swear there's a game I was trying it out. I had like 3 collars, like the Emperor was just holding all of them.
Awesome.
And
Yeah,
the idea is that I would
reactor
I would
terminal.
just like get like 8 of them out, right? And I would just like peek at the top 8 cards of my force pile, take whatever I wanted to hand. And then at some point at the end of the game, I'd put away, put your weapon, or the dark side equivalent. I just put them all back into my use pile.
That was awesome.
And so
me and Matt Thornton were actually talking about something. Yeah,
and then I would just have like all 5s and 6s to draw like at the end of the game.
It's really funny because in San Diego, me and Matt Thornton were talking about the same thing at like 4 a.m. on Sunday night. Like we were both drunk. We were like, "What if we did like a bring them before me a reactor terminal deck with like 15 binders in it? You just had all these 6s." And then you got back and you told me the binder's not on GEM, so I can't build it. And I was like, "Oh, well, that sucks."
See, this is why we had you guys on tonight, like for the interesting stuff. So let's get started with like deck building itself. Like, where do you get what when you look at a deck, like when you're thinking about like when you're going to a tournament and everything, what sparks like what's the first thing you guys think of when you want to build a deck?
Ryan, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, let's start with Ryan.
I'm usually looking at least for the archetype I want to play, I'm usually looking at the matchups across the field, trying to figure out what am I likely to see on the other side, making sure that at least in my head I can come up with a plan against those types of decks. You know, if I have a late side in mind, but I have no plan against Thrawn, or I'm going to lose to Rops, Brigham's bad, then it might just not be the deck to play for that event. So that's usually my starting point. If I feel like I'm okay with that archetype against the tier 1 decks, then I get into more of the nitty gritty of, you know, the actual 60 cards. Usually I'll build it out with like 75 and then cut down from there.
Okay.
So I kind of I build decks differently so most of the time I'm building a deck, I'm just like, what's an idea, and then I'll go with it. I won't even be thinking about the meta. I'll just like the bring before me thing, like, will this reactor terminal thing even work? It seems like it'll be fun, let's try it. If I'm building for an event, then I'm thinking like, what are the top decks on the other side? What do I think matches up well against it? And kind of build backwards. Like if I think like I'll know what the top dark side decks are, and I'll maybe invent a new light side deck just to beat those, or I'll select something from that I know that's established on the light side and figure out how to tweak it for those. But yeah, but generally, most of the time I'm building decks, I'm not even thinking about what the other side is doing, and I just want to do something that seems really powerful. And that's actually like the Shadow Collective list that everybody was running for a long time. I was just like, well, what happens if I take out all these really low Destiny cards and I put in 6s and 7s, so I can and all these gangsters, so I'm always adding a Destiny to power. And then that started working really well. And then it's like, well, what are the best versions of Destiny 7 or Destiny 6? And then it was just, it was so powerful that it just inserted itself into the meta. Like I wasn't even considering how I was going to beat other decks.
Okay. So, what challenges do you guys face when you want to work on the decks that you're building? We're gonna start with Eric now.
Yeah, I'd say one of the challenges is testing the ideas itself. I find it more fun to build a deck than actually play it, and then like I always find like the first game I'll play on Gemp, I get like the worst draw, or I run into the worst matchup, and I'm like, all right, maybe this deck has potential, but I don't care anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I guess one of the other hurdles is just like getting enough games with the deck as well. Like, I don't know if Ryan played other card games, but I played like Versus really for a long time, and that like you really wanted to like know all the matchups really well. And in Star Wars, it's just hard to do that style of play testing because games take so long, and so much of it's like based off of play skill that like really getting in enough games to understand how two decks interact. That's just something that's just really hard to do. And so I think there's a certain level of uncertainty that that you'll have before any tournament. Just because like I don't know if you necessarily going to have the reps to understand all the ins and outs.
Yeah, for sure. I'd agree with that. I think a lot of times I'll have fun building a deck, but actually testing it to make sure it's good is more mature. And certainly takes a lot of time and reps that sometimes might be better spent just learning other decks and other matchups. So yeah, there's been a lot of ideas where that I've scrapped maybe prematurely because the first couple of matchups were bad or bad draws or whatever, and I just said, nah, I'll go work on something else now.
Okay. Garrett, what about you? Like, you're sitting up there all quiet and pretty, like as a deck builder and somebody who does creative stuff. Like, what do you find challenging?
I mean, I was just listening to the smart guys. So, for me, I think my deck building runs a little bit closer to Eric in the sense of I tend to like to come up with the idea absent the meta. Like, I don't care what the meta is. If I think the idea sounds cool and good, let's see if we can make that idea function and then figure out if it fits in the meta or not. But I'm also have never really considered myself a great deck builder. I'm in my history in all games, I'm pretty good at coming up with the initial idea, and I'm pretty good at refining it from card like 57 to 60. But if I'm building all 60 cards, I tend to go off on some bad tangent that ends up with R2 and fire extinguishers, and it just doesn't. I get too in my own head on stuff at times. So that's having teammates to kind of bounce some of those ideas off has always been when I was at my best, when I could be like, hey, this sounds like a fun idea, and then start trimming it out and have somebody else who's not invested in the idea kind of step in and look at it and go, all right, well, these 15 cards are really stupid, but if we turn those 15 cards into something good, now you've got a deck. And that's where I tend to do kind of my best work. And Eric's laughing like, yeah, I know people like that. So
See, I
But-
actually that's interesting. I actually intentionally try kind of like 4 or 5 card packages when I'm building decks that I know that are like not going to be the best thing, but I'm just really curious to see how it is. And so like I'll try the deck and I'll have some understanding of like how the main idea works. And then I'll also get understanding if like this side package makes sense. And then I like if I play like, 1 or 2 games, I can start like tossing out those cards on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Or being like, hey, this like side package is actually pretty cool. I should be exploring that. Maybe not in this deck, but in some other deck. Also, our fire extinguisher R2, tried and true combo. Nothing wrong with that.
I mean, I think Tom Haid played it before, and I think it works for him. So, and he's a world champ. So we're asked in the chat, on average, how many test games does it take you guys to figure out if an idea is good or not? Let's start with Ryan here.
Really depends how far off the wall the idea is.
Mm-hmm.
I would say normally a handful. If I get like 5 to 10 under my belt, I'll have a solid idea of where it's at. Sometimes it's less. Like the added forward the portable scanners, I felt decent about that working. Even if I didn't get the devices, there was still sixes in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
I think I play tested that like 2 or 3 games. I said it's fine, lock it in. Yeah, other stuff might be closer to a dozen before I actually figure out what the right 60 cards are, or if it'll work at all.
I think it's usually, unless my matchup or draw in that first game is horrible, it's usually 1 game is all I need to like know that it's
Okay.
something there. I will say that the deck that I play after I've played like 5 or 6 games is that like you're really just I'm really just looking at like those final 5 cards.
Mm-hmm.
But those final 5 card choices are so much better than my first or second try. But like if the premise of the deck is going to work or not, I'm going to know in 1 game.
Okay.
And I think I'd probably agree there. I think it's easy to see real early if the premise is not good.
Mhm.
Like you can tell almost right away, hey, this just isn't going to work the way I want it to. Knowing if the premise is good, yeah, I think it takes a couple games to get to flesh it out and finalize those 60 cards, depending on how far, like Ryan was saying, how far off the wall you go with it.
Yeah, sorry. He's exactly right on that too. Like,
But yeah, like if you're going with a fairly set deck type and you're really only changing 5 to 10 cards,
Mm-hmm.
you'll know pretty quick, hey, this is going to work or this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
If you're doing something, where you're wholesale changing everything, it's going to take a few more games to really flesh out the optimal build.
Yeah, it's a refinement process, really.
Okay. So, and what do you think? What are some qualities that make a good deck builder?
You can win games with what you build.
Well, okay. So, I mean,
That's not oversimplifying it, but
that is oversimplifying it. Yes, you're not wrong. But I mean, let me ask you this: why is it I can build the same deck that you build, Ryan, and go 0-4 with it when you go 4-1?
I don't know. I gave you a good CCT list. I don't know what happened.
You're not going to like the answer to that question, Dan.
Okay.
There's
To be fair, the CCT I did really well with at Worlds. I only lost 1 game.
No, I mean, seriously, what makes a good deck builder?
Goes to you.
I mean, I think there's a creative aspect to it, being able to come up with ideas that are a little bit off the beaten path. And then I think there's also the skill of being able to refine it into an actual good 60 cards that can be competitive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think Desai was saying something in Slack the other day to kind of that effect that, there's people who can come up with the ideas and people who can build on the ideas and actually make a winning deck out of it. Some people can do both, like Eric. Some people are one or the other. I think they're both good deck building qualities that are not necessarily the same thing.
Okay. Ryan, what about you? What do you think some of the qualities that make a good deck builder?
Or sorry, me or Garrett.
I think you meant Eric.
I mean,
Okay. Um, I think Brian was pretty much on the money there. I on the creative side, um, and one of the things that I realized that I like to do when I'm trying to be creative is making sure that I'm really taking the concept as far as it can go. Um, like I don't want to like maybe trample is really popular, and so I think like generally I should be playing perimeter scan, but I'm going to the first time I build a deck, if it's like an off the wall strategy, I'm going to kind of ignore that and just push my deck to the limit. If I'm like, I'm trying to think of a good example here. Well, like this Bring Before Me deck I was talking about, with like the Star Reactor Terminal. I'm like, well, I want to play 12 devices, and I really want to make sure that I draw them and I'm playing them naturally to just kind of speed up that process, just so I can get that online quicker and see how that flows. And then if I'm like, oh, this is worthwhile, then I'm going to start thinking about paring that number down to get it, to include like better cards. Or like the Shadow Collective deck, I was like, I'm going to be playing 14 Destiny 7s. Another example, I built this like ISB 7 Emperor deck that I played 7 Emperors. I'm like, I'm going to start with that. I'm not going to play less. Where the concept there, and I remember Joe was on Holotheatre talking about it, where you just play Emperor back when slip sliding away, you could get any site. You would play Emperor for free to the 2-0, and then you'd move him over to docking bay when you have like established control out. So he's like a walking Twix, but you could retrieve them with Imperial Enforcement. And I found that I love the consistency and I didn't need less. But I was always like, well, what happens if I went down to 5? So I think being able to like take your creative ideas to the limit, is something to, one, have the creative idea and then be willing to do like to do that in the first time you're building a deck. And then on the refinement side, I think just being able to like know the meta well and know the matchup. Like I played EBO for a very long time, and I knew the matchups better than I did any other deck. And I actually, at like the Endor Grand Prix, I knew Hunt Down was a bad matchup, but I didn't want to put any cards in to beat it. I figured I could potentially beat it without, and I'd rather not waste the slots. And sure enough, I played against Connor, and I did exactly that.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, like knowing the matchups so well helps you make those like final choices. And so knowing the meta and knowing your matchups, in terms of like refining it and being able to imagine how any game is going to play out is really going to help in that other side of the deck building process.
Okay.
So we got a couple questions in chat, and they kind of roll into the little snippet I was going to say out there, with Carl asking, how do you recover when an idea fails? And Zeke's, what's the number one tip? I think the biggest thing I have to do as a deck builder, and obviously I'm not quite as accomplished as you guys, but I do all right, is not to get too attached to an idea. Like if I have an idea and I go, hey, I really like this idea and this sounds really good, I need to learn when to just say, all right, this isn't working, and not get too sunk into, oh, I'm going to make this work. Because sometimes we just have bad ideas. Like sometimes there are ideas that just don't work the way you want it to, and not sinking that time into it is better than anything else. And accepting that, sometimes you have a bad idea that just doesn't work. Like, don't get yourself beat up because you designed a deck that didn't work. All of us have done that at times. It's, dust yourself off, move on, and go to the next deck. Like it's don't get too wrapped up in trying to find perfection right away.
Okay. And what do you guys think about that? Like, what do you guys think of like one good tip to give to a new and returning player?
Well, the earlier advice of being able to take ideas to the limit in the first time and kind of, over a couple of games, like refine your list, is something I'd suggest any person trying to build a new deck. Another one is just do what's fun and comfortable to you. When I first was getting back into the game, I think I was playing on Gemp kind of like anonymously, and I had this throne room deck with like 6 Yarnas, and my whole strategy was to get like Jedi Luke to the Cantina, and I don't remember, and I would get just like random aliens to like the audience chamber, and it was just a fun deck. And at some point I realized that it was fun to actually win games instead of do something dumb, and that inspired me to build better decks.
Okay. Ryan, what about you?
I think I'd agree with both of those points. I think when you're starting out with a new idea, you don't try to make the perfect 60 on the first pass. Just kind of throw all the cards you think are fun and it could be part of the concept in there and see how it works. Refine it after that. And yeah, if it doesn't work after a game or two, don't be afraid to just say this is bad, or get a second opinion from someone else who could say no, this is bad. Don't keep spending time on this.
I say that about all my decks all the time.
Yeah. I certainly have a graveyard of ideas.
I'm curious to hear your guys' recent abysmal failures, if you'd be willing to share.
No.
Just I'll give you the one I played at Worlds that we did a little bit of play testing and just didn't get as much testing in as we wanted to. I brought a EBO deck that stacked like 20 aliens and used Ancient Watering Hole and Fombas and Weather Vane to drain under the shield for one at each site. It was honestly, it wasn't nearly as bad as it sounds. I went 2-2, and one of those was just I misplayed horribly against JNAP at the end of for most of the game, and lost a game I definitely could have won. And it was just a weird, but it was 2-2 at Worlds, and it wasn't good enough to win. But it was a fun idea, and like when it all works, it's glorious. You're like, all right, I've got Fombas and dudes at the 4th marker, so you can't battle me there. I'm draining for 1 at each of the underground sites.
Yep.
And retrieving with the Weather Vane, and glorious.
It was
not good enough, but glorious.
It was not fun to play against with Thrawn before all of the erratas.
Last really bad one I had that comes to mind is a CCT flip deck that was an Emperor Start idea. And you like Palpatine at the security tower and Sith probe droids to transfer the captives to the audience chamber, and then it'll just be like Dark Side mains, and it retrieves the Force every turn, and that's cool.
Yeah,
I built it all, and I played the first game, and I was like, Palpatine's not a warrior. He can't escort that captive over. And instead of throwing it away, I doubled down. I was like, what can I do to make him a warrior? And what's the premier effect, like Ket Malice or whatever? And there were like 5 of those in the deck, and I kept like getting Connor to play test me. He's like, "Why? This isn't good." I was like, "Just see if there's something there." And yeah, there was not. But if ever Sidious or Palpatine persona with a warrior icon, I'm golden. It's sitting in the queue waiting to come back out.
You would think an episode 1 version at least would be, right?
And I looked at all of them. It's like none of these guys are warriors.
I like that. Well, I think before we get into any more deck building, I think it's time we get into some of the decks that were submitted to us. Again, we had a few decks submitted to us, so again, big thank you to those who did. We'll keep them anonymous unless you are watching and you want to announce what deck is yours. But let's go ahead and start. We're going to start with this Obi-Wan Kenobi communing deck. I found this one to be the most out of all the ones that I was submitted, besides there's a Dark Side Thrawn deck, and I think everybody is sick and tired of Thrawn, but we're gonna look at that one obviously. But I think this was the most interesting one to me. So it's not necessarily, it's not an Obi-Wan community deck. You play Ben Kenobi. Looks like you play Careful Planning, so that way you can get the Tatooine system, and one of the looks like you play the city outskirts, and you utilize I Must Be Allowed to Speak to get the farm, multiple copies of We Must Accelerate Plans to get the Boss Nest Chamber, and then you also play the Tashi Station. Not a lot of people play that one. So let's go around. We'll start with let's say with Eric first. What is your take on this deck in particular?
Yeah, I took notes. I reviewed this before, and I took a couple notes for each of the decks. So one of the things that I do whenever I build decks, I realize, is that no matter what, if I have a strange combo I want to come up with, the first step is always like, what is my platform? How much force am I activating?
Mm-hmm.
How much force am I giving up? How much am I interested in force draining? And if so, for how much on my own?
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing that stands out to me is that this is starting Tatooine CRV or CPV to get the 2/1. So it's with Walkling a 5/2 start. And that's just frankly not that strong right now. So I think like if you started off a 2/0 instead, and then one of the things I noticed is that he's using Mindful of the Future to get out the Tashi Station. If you replace those Mindfuls with Yarnas, which allow you to pull a Tatooine battleground site every turn, that will help you get the 2/1 that lets you pull Ben Kenobi, but it's also going to help you find your Tashi Station. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's an effect. So it's sort of like losing a card as opposed to but it's free, and it helps you find 2 cards instead of just 1, and it's Destiny 6. Mm-hmm. And it also it pulls Wild Card, which is just one of the best ships in the game right now. So it kind of does everything that this deck wants to do.
Okay.
And then the other thing that I noticed, he's using this scout effect.
Yeah.
Which I'm pretty sure the concept is he wants to make Ben Kenobi a scout. And I think the effect also permits that scout to move as a react.
Yes.
So the idea is that Ben Kenobi, wherever he is just going to be able to, you put him in the middle at the Tashi Station. And then if they battle elsewhere, he'll be able to react and then do his reviving, which seems super cool to me. The concern I have with that effect is that I guess it's good to like have it as effect. There's cards that like, I forget the name of it. There's like that card from Cloud City that lets you move a character as a react and
dash
for free. Yeah, dash and free if they're a scout.
Mm-hmm.
Like here, the effects on table, your opponent knows what's going to happen and they can play around it. You wouldn't be able to play around dash. Dash does cost force, but it like the surprise factor.
It's free if they're a scout.
Yeah,
dash is actually really good. So I'll jump in a little bit because I've played around with a Tatooine Scouts deck before. I tried with a Diplo deck with Batmouse to make something work that ran Scouts on Tatooine because like insertion planning is really good.
Mm-hmm.
And dash and being able to move around, like a lot of what Eric is saying is spot on what I was saying. If you really want the 3 battlegrounds on Tatooine, Yarna's better than Mindful. I would actually, as much as I like Tashi Station, I almost would rather see that just be a Jedi Council Chamber and 3 speaks and just not give up. You know, you want your 3 locations. That looks like this deck is really just kind of focused on trying to hold those 3 locations, drain, get your celebration going, and go off. It's if you're going to go with scouts, go harder into scouts.
Yeah.
You know, don't use Old Man Luke, use Luke Rebel Scout. You know, use insertion planning to keep your scouts up there because it's actually a great card.
There's
You
4
know, like
leadership, so put in
4
a
leadership
Kraken or
seems
whatever.
excessive.
I mean, if you wanted to put in like a general Kraken or more scouts to actually use with it, that could be something.
I think I think the 4 leaderships are for the Admiral Radis just because he's so integral for the space. Like I'm looking at the space fleet, and while the Bright Hope and the Carillion Corvette are good in say a deck like No Idea or Old Allies, I feel like you want to go a little stronger. Like you were saying with the Yarna, you can pull the wild card. That's a really good card right now. So why not go with the wild card over say the Carillion Corvette? Because I mean the Carillion Corvette only has ability of 1 on it. So and it's a Destiny 1 card. It's not necessarily the best. And I would rather use Admiral Radis.
But Radis pulls it.
I understand that, but I mean, I'd rather use Radis to pull the Lightmaker. I mean, because right now with all the space that Darkseid is running around with, say like the Chimera, or all the ships that CCT plays, all those star ships that they're running around with have pretty high immunity, and being able to crack those is pretty good. The other option is, I would say, maybe a booster in Pulsar Skate. You're running Wedge Antilles, maybe running like a Mirex Tarek. That way you can recycle cards in it. Wouldn't be too bad either.
Yeah.
So, but okay, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that I think Garrett was exactly right about kind of leaning into the scout theme.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at the list, and like if you did that, like it looks like he's playing General Lando just because he's a general.
Mm-hmm.
And then if he leans into the scout theme, you could play General what's his name?
Crix Maydeen.
Dodonna.
Yeah,
Or Maydeen to pull scouts.
Or Kraken, General Kraken, right? Who's just going to add a Destiny?
Oh, yeah.
Is also a scout.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then like more insertion plannings and just kind of making sure there's more synergies there on that kind of sub theme.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's go into our next one. It is going to be a dark side deck. Let's go into the Thrawn objective. So I know we've been seeing a lot of these, but we now have a take on this one. And the first thing that I'm noticing right off the bat is it's a lot of single characters. Not necessarily bad, but I mean, I'm just saying like it's a Highlander deck. What do you guys think about this one?
Ryan, you want to take the first pass?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I haven't played a ton of Thrawn since it came out. I've seen some of the lists from San Diego and some of the replays. I don't necessarily see anything that jumps out at me in this one. Does look like an extra location potentially.
Mm-hmm.
4 sites instead of 3. I'm not sure about that. The Highlander characters are interesting. I might want like double Tarkin maybe over one of those other guys, but overall it seems like it has maybe 50 55 of the cards that I would expect to see in a Thrawn.
Yeah, and I do personally I like the fact that the player is going off of the code clearance. You're running a lot of ability 3 characters. That seems like it makes sense. Giving yourself a lot of high forfeit value characters there. Keeps you stable on the ground as well as up in space.
Yeah, I haven't seen Apology accepted in a lot of lists, but I think it's a cool card, especially with Nita pulling it.
Yeah, I don't love only 2 Star Destroyers.
Mm-hmm.
Like that feels light because you've got a ton of forfeit, but like a single Lieutenant Tarn could just absolutely wreck your entire game.
True.
And that's kind of a niche, card, but if this style of deck continues to be popular, that's going to go back to people will throw in, Tarn and a concussion missile on a Falcon, and suddenly, your whole ship goes boom because all your guys can be forfeit 1 million. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So
Karn's a great card.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's. I don't love 2 Star Destroyers in there. I don't love the extra sight. I
Mhm.
like Decree, but like getting Decree going when you only have 2 Star Destroyers and you need to control both systems
Yeah.
feels like a stretch.
Mhm. I know.
Actually, like
It seems like so. This is Zeke's deck. He did announce it in the chat. So I would say like the 2/1, the Mind Sight is probably the weakest. I like the Capital City just because it is a drain 2. You um, over that site. Like I liked it, but I mean you could really hold it with Veers and a Walker. I mean, especially with you having multiple characters to back up Veers against Master Luke V. And then on top of that, I really would like to see an Admiral Mahdi. Mahdi is really good in any type of big blue space deck. He adds a +1 to immunity. So using him is really good. He's also a commander. So
Yeah,
I don't see him and I don't see Krennic.
yeah, those are
Krennic is
two.
another ability 3 guy I'd really like to have in there just to prevent Destiny from being canceled.
Mm-hmm.
I think the big thing for me is, which you already said, was just that there's 2 Star Destroyers.
Yeah.
Like if one's down, I think one of the strengths of Thrawn is that their space is really good, and if 1 Star Destroyer is already down, and it has Thrawn on it, you can't really beat up the other system.
Mm-hmm.
And Dan already observed that there's only one of every character. Tarkin should be a 2-up in every Thrawn list. He's just always going to add a Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to help take care of, like, he's always going to redraw your bad Destiny. So you definitely want an additional Star Destroyer or other ships. The other thing that I noticed is that there's no Blizzard 1 to put Veers on. Like I appreciate that both of his walkers are pullable by the interrupt, by the squadron assignments, but being immune to under attack, and having a second pilot and like places to put passengers, like the Mark Hand Blizzard 1, it only takes 1 pilot.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't stash like another like forfeit 8 or 9 guy on it.
Yeah.
Like having one that's pullable and then having just the best vehicle Darkseid could play with Veers is just really important.
And to answer the question in the chat, yes, Governor Price can pull Blizzard 1 because it does not have any ability on it.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Yep.
And the other thing is, there's no real protection for Thrawn if you lose him. I would recommend playing either a second copy of Thrawn or the fun card Lost in Space.
Lost in Space is real good.
Yeah.
If the Zeke doesn't know how that works, so it's just, you can pull it with within your defensive shields because it's immediate effect, but it just says when a character is forfeited from space, you can play it and then they get basically trapped on the system and then they can be recovered in the move phase. So it's sort of like a Jedi's resilience, except for you don't have to redeploy them. It's just insane in this deck.
Okay. Our next deck is going to be another combat. It's going to be a combat readiness deck. This is going to be a one based around the Mustafar system. It runs multiple. It runs Mustafar, Vader's castle, Vader's docking bay. Runs another battleground docking bay. It runs the invisible hand docking bay. But again, this is a combat readiness deck. And this was a little interesting. Like it's running, looks like Black 11, or no, that's not Black 11.
I think that's the one where if he's with Vader, he draws and subtract or something.
I'll confirm it here in a second. But Ryan, what are your first what are your first thoughts on this one?
I've always liked just for CRV as a platform. I think it's pretty neat. The ability to get out Vader in a ship pretty quick, it can generate a ton of force. I remember the build that Lenny used to have in playtesting at one point was like it started mob points, drop Bonnie to a docking bay, grab Vader, grab a shuttle, move up to the system, and you'd activate like 17 force on turn 2 or something ridiculous. This build, I found the 2 different types of Vaders interesting, the B and the non-B. I guess depending on the matchup, you might want one or the other. I think you can get by with just one. I'm assuming I'd also like to have an extra Bonnie, maybe 3 felt like the good number when I was messing around with these kind of builds. So you could kind of reliably get him to the docking bay turn 1 and Vader in the hand. Crush looks like an interesting effect start. I guess canceling Clash is nice on the ground. I can see the upside if I have you now, but I'd almost like to see like a 4-lom or something if I was going to go that way and have some way to cycle it back. And just be able to pull it every turn and kind of filter out the rest of the deck. Without that, it just kind of feels like you start Crush, you pull I have you now, and you just hold it for as long as you need to. I don't know. Might be a better third effect than that. Space package seems fine. The black 11 or whatever it is interesting. I couldn't figure out what that tie was when I was looking at it earlier. But
that is black 11. When it's with Vader, you can draw Destiny and subtract that from the opponent's total power.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely something that you don't see it every day. Eric, what are your thoughts?
So I thought this list looked initially pretty good. I thought a lot of the things that I noted were just kind of like change a card here or there. Like Ryan was saying, I think like using mob points, given that this deck always wants to be in space, you might as well just get that extra activation. I think he's using the wrong docking bay. I think you'd want to use the blockade. I guess the downside there is that they could potentially move to your bridge, but having that text, the movement text, I think it's like they have to use 8 force regard to like move away or something. That's just limiting your opponent's ability to do that, to like move to their docking base is just really strong. The other docking bay I would consider is the Death Star docking bay, just because then you could potentially put all sections on alert, which is just a blowout card. I don't think he needs point man and min in this list, especially since he's starting secret plans. Because Vader's going to be in space, I think he should lean into the Maul on the ground, probably play 3 or 4, and then a second Phantom Menace.
He's playing 2. They're just different. Yeah, they're just an AI and non-AI.
Oh, I see. So he's playing 2, but he's playing 2 Mauls and 2 Phantom Menaces. I think he needs another Maul or 2. Yeah, I didn't see the 2 AIs, and then the new Magistrate, who's just going to say Force Drain +1 because he's always going to have 1 or 2 systems in this deck.
I think it's with Thrawn though.
No, the Force, that's the immunity text. I think the Force Drain bonus is if you control more battle or more systems than your opponent.
Oh, you're correct.
You're correct. So I think that would be like a perfect card to add to this deck. And the other thought I had, especially if you add mob points in, I think you could get away with getting rid of Accelerate in the bridge and just add another 1-0 docking bay or 2. It'll save them slots. It'll be more consistent. And I think he's going to end up activating just as much.
Okay.
I mean, they're running established control instead of mob points. It's similar activation. And you're pulling Fondor instead of whatever their system is. So I'm not as set on that. I some of this deck, as I look at it, feels a little disjointed. Like it feels like it's got a lot of answers for things, but no good way to guarantee them out. So like Jango Fett's awesome in the right matchup, but if you don't have a way to get Jango Fett out, you're hoping on a 1 in 60 draw to have him when you need him for the matchup. Like, you know, and Ryan hit on the 2 different Vaders who do 2 different things. Yeah, it just feels a little, it feels like it needs that tweak. Like, I think the idea is strong, and I think it's got, you know, the general idea of use good cards and play them well is good. It's just a, you know, finalizing it a little bit more and tightening it up might be
Yeah, it's a little refinement. That's all.
really good.
Yeah, the concept's good.
Like, I'll agree with you guys. Like, one thing I'm noticing is Nuke Gunray's in the deck, but there's really nobody for him to draw an extra battle destiny with. Like,
Maul, right?
Maul's the big one. Like, I understand
You
that.
might not
Like,
want to.
you might, and don't get me wrong.
Well, if you're running 3 or 4 Mauls, then maybe 2 newts make sense.
Well, and Phantom Menace will pull Maul or will pull Newt.
Yeah, that's true. And
So-
and then like Boba Fett Bounty Hunter, I kind of I might want to see maybe like Boba Fett and then a Slave One, the Starship, and that way you can pull it because he's really good with Vader. I feel like you almost want to have another Starship that can go really attack. Like, don't get me wrong, Mara in her ship is pretty good. And then, I mean, yes, you do have the Emperor in the shuttle.
Right.
But I feel like you want something extra to hold in space because right now, I feel like light side space and like is kind of weak. Unless you're going up against like a Y4 Ops, and then really don't want to go up against the Y4 Ops with this deck.
I'm just going to shoot all this down. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be shot down. So, I don't know. Maybe you don't need the Slave One then.
Yeah, I don't think the Slave One would work either
Yeah.
because he's not really doing
Not bad
he's
response.
not matching ships, right? He pulls
Yeah.
Vader's Sky, and the other ones he's just drawing into.
That's
I think
true.
if you're going to stick with the maintenance spell, I'd like to maybe see Aura Sing with Blaster Rifle to have another bounty hunter to work with,
Mm-hmm.
and another weapon to use with Dr. E.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's pretty ambitious to use Kier and Min who need Imperials, and then Newt who needs Trade Federation,
Yeah.
and then Boba Fett who needs bounty hunters. Like, these are all really great when you get them together, but you're gonna have a game where you have the Newt Boba Fett draw, or you're gonna have the game where you have like the Tarkin Maul draw, and it's like your decks just start looking a whole lot worse.
Yeah. I mean, Fett gets another draw with an Imperial, but he's really good with Vader. So I see what you mean, though.
Yeah, like I'd love to, like Kier and Min, I'd love to see one of those become P59. He's got great synergy with Newt. He's got great synergy with Dre. Like, some of that is, again, just sort of this refinement of like, where can we put better cards
Mm-hmm.
that refine better? Like Jango Fett, why not make that Forlom with gun virtual to cycle the I Have You Nows?
Yeah.
He adds 2 Destiny with Boba Fett. Like, again, it's just kind of the, you know, this is a good concept that with a little bit of refinement suddenly becomes a pretty solid little mains platform.
Yeah, and you were
Activate a
talking.
bunch of force, do good things, and make
Yeah,
stuff happen.
I think most of our CRV has a lot of potential, and I think a lot of. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of things going right in this deck, and it's just a really hard deck to build. I had something similar to this. I was doing Star Killer base CRV, which basically turned my Kylos into Mauls, because Kylo at the 2/1 was just 4-string +1, and then I used like Magistrate as well to get who's just going to be 4-string +1, and then and then I would go to space and then kind of have a couple characters on the ground, each one able to do more damage. And it's just hard to find that right combination of characters to make it all work.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's go with the light side deck next. This is going to be. I like how people are sending over CPV and CRV decks. So we do have another one of those. That's going to be another Tatooine CPV. This one going with the Jedi Business effect. So this one's kind of interesting. I definitely found this one to be really interesting. It takes a lot of the points that you guys were talking about with the other one and kind of integrating it into this one. So, who wants to go first?
Hey, Garrett, have you started one?
I haven't, so I was kind of thinking maybe that'd be me. I don't love this deck, and I've tried to play similar decks. I love the concept. I'd love to see a Tatooine mains deck work, and this flows somewhat what we talked about with the Obi-Wan deck, where you're starting the Twix and Tatooine instead of the battleground, and you're using Yarna to pull stuff, but you're not using the wild card, which I think is a mistake. Mos Espa really, I think, should be Mos Eisley.
100%.
Like they're functionally identical, except Mos Eisley gets you the movement text that's just silly.
Yeah.
I don't. I like the idea of squadron assignments, but it feels like what you have in space there is cannot stand up to something like Thrawn, and that puts you behind the 8 ball, where like loading up the wild card with Solo and some other guys might just be better, or at least give you a little bit more of a shot. But it's still, that's a tough deck to build. I like this one. This is more refined than the Obi-Wan deck. I think the Obi-Wan deck, there was a lot of things we could kind of look at and go, hey, you could lean into this a little bit more. You could really theme this out. This one feels pretty solid for what you're trying to do. I'm just not 100% confident that what you're trying to do gets you all the way where you want to go.
So Adam Fletcher in the chat actually points out why Mos Espa is in there. Jedi Business pulls it.
Yeah, I don't think it's worth it though.
Yeah, I'd rather have Yarna pulling Mos Eisley.
I'd rather get and maybe if we were going to the third site, the city outskirts, to pull one of the Jedi. If you wanted the third site.
Yeah.
Like, I know you guys are saying why not play the Speak with the Jedi Council Chamber and then play the Jedi Council Chamber. I kind of want to go all in on Tatooine. And I understand like pulling Yoda and everything, and that's really good, but the Jedi outskirts can pull you any of the Jedi that you want. It can pull you the Qui-Gon, the Mace.
Yeah.
I mean, it's essentially a 3-1 by itself in that fact.
Yeah. That's kind of a neat way to think about it. The thing I like the Speak here, just because getting 3 icons and giving up 0 when you're already giving up 4 icons in this deck. And if you add the 2 on there, you're giving up 5. And that's just a lot.
True.
So, and like compare that to like a QMC or an OA, which will give up, 5 or more icons. But those decks have 2 Drain 2 sites and have like Harksef and the Falcon, which are just like free. And so I don't think you can give that many icons in this deck. So I definitely think it should be playing like 5 Yarnas and Mos Eisley. And Yarna becomes a lot better in this deck because he can pull 3PO with the 2-0, and then he can cycle the extra ones. And the other cool thing, I think the BB-8 ship should be removed and replaced with wild card. And the other cool thing is like the one really good hate for 3PO is restraining bolt. but it doesn't work if 3PO's in space.
Mm-hmm.
So if you immediately deployed him and then shuttled him up at like a turn or two later, you can just be immune to restraining bolt, which is just a cool interaction.
See,
So
I like that.
I would cut like follow the legend and impressive, most impressive, and just add 2 more Yarnas and like replace BB-8 ship for wild card. And I think I was thinking about Jedi business. Like, I know it makes Mace immune and it makes Qui-Gon cheaper and it pulls Mos Espa, but we don't care about pulling Mos Espa. Would this deck be better if it was just Saitor and then, or like Speak? Like, if you're playing Tatooine and you're not playing Speak, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's so, Speak is just so good.
Especially against like a deck like CCT.
Oh, and the other thought, when you raised the good point about like Thrawn space being so good, you should be playing one of each Luke. The other Luke who can add Destiny to power attrition, and just adding like, if you have Yarnas, you know, you're cycling in your excess Yarna, so you just have all these Destiny 6s, and you can add to attrition with Luke. Like, that could start being really good in space.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would want 2 celebrations. I think one's not really worth it with so much masterful Luke combo. I think the Bergman might be overkill when you have Luke in celebration. And there's not really a lot of green cards to retrieve with it, because ideally you want the sabers on the table, not in the lost pile. I think if you're going to put like a X-Wing cannon in there, or a landing claw, or something else that you can cycle back around with Bergman, maybe it makes more sense, but it might be overkill as far as retrieval goes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I actually would almost like to see. I'd almost like to see the Jedi Council chamber and the Speaks become Lisa's and a Boss Nass's chamber. You get one less activation, but you get one better Destiny and the anti-weapon text, which can be useful, but it also isn't a liability if they go there.
Mm-hmm.
There's not as much of a liability as giving up that drain of 3 can be real bad, because if you have to go defend the Jedi Council chamber, you don't have any way to get out of there.
Right.
And that's kind of like, I guess the other thing I'm looking at this deck, and it just kind of struck me, other than the 2 all wings and Squadron, you don't have any way of pulling. You've got a bunch of effects, and they're all one-off effects, and you don't have any way to go get them. I'd really like to see an effect puller of some sort.
Doesn't Walkling get all the effects in this?
Yeah, Walkling gets all the effects.
Walkling will get
except for
all
Yarna.
of them, but it only get them once.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm looking at it and just, it's pretty well formed. I mean, I don't think it's a bad deck. It's just, I don't know if it's a fit for the current meta. You know, like we were talking about, I think it's a fine deck. I think it's a solid mains deck. I think it'll put you in a lot of games. But I'm just looking at this and mentally trying to figure out how it beats Ralops or Thrawn. And I'm struggling to get there.
Yeah, I have the same
You know?
Okay, and we got one last deck tonight before we wrap it up. And I think everybody's going to, once we reveal it, I think everybody's going to realize who this is from. But it is a My Kind of Scum with a bunch of EPP Tusken Raiders.
What?
Okay. What are your thoughts, guys?
Can I start? I have a question. What are the surface defenses for?
They're non-V, so they add 1 to weapon destiny.
Okay, that's what I missed. Okay.
Which I can respect.
I'm sitting there the whole time looking at it before the show. I was like, what are they trying to pull with these as far as effects go? And I didn't even realize there's not a virtual icon. So that's not terrible. I don't hate that.
Yeah. I like the utilization of the Crossfire.
Yeah.
Like, that's a card that we don't see a lot of outside of like destroyer droids. So I like that. I really wish it played the new Boba Fett.
The Bounty Hunter.
No, I'm sorry. The new Bib Fortuna.
Oh yeah. Well, then I guess you're gonna kill Jabba.
No, he just he doesn't
Does he
die.
kill him or just blanks
He
his
just
stack?
weakens
Yeah, he
it.
just weakens
He,
him. Weakens him. So
he cancels Jabba's text.
yeah. But I mean, you get like the drains. I mean, you have a lot of Tatooine battlegrounds. That's why I'm saying that. I would like to see that to give yourself some extra drain potential.
You already have Galed though. Like the only site Galed doesn't add one at is the Desert Heart. And if you try and run Galed and Bib, you're just asking to get resistanced anyways. Like
Yeah.
I think Bib is solid, and I think he'd be a good add. I'd almost rather, if you're going to go with that, then just drop Galed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because I think it's one or the other.
Plus, I mean, I like the additional, like, you can activate. So, I mean, I like Scum decks because you can play Wipe Them Out, all of them. And Bib kind of has that whenever they deploy a character. And
Yep.
But at the same time, I feel like this deck really needs some sort of, like, Imperial Barrier or...
Yeah, I was
something
worried
like
about the
that.
lack of defensive cards.
Exactly.
Jabba's square.
There's no sorry about the
Like
best chancellor. There's no barriers.
Yeah.
No gick.
You guys know Jabba's
I-
twerp is like other game texts.
No.
It either requires one for each leader, or it can deploy as a react 3 non-unique aliens to your leader.
Okay.
So if you like Jabba Khan and Scum, they're all free. All your Tusken Raiders,
Oh, okay.
which is cool. But I still think you want like a stunning. If you could do that, then play like stunning leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Or
feel
like
like...
a nutshell pass, just a little
Yeah.
extra.
And then the other thing is, I feel like you need another...
I was actually thinking you should play as his as his rep. I'm actually not joking.
Yeah, I
don't
know
if
you're
we'll
not. That's the
text
best
it, but
part.
I'll take
he,
your word
he,
for it.
he is cheaper, and like the rep being able to cancel the destiny or force change with your rep is so strong.
Mm-hmm.
I think he should play. I know that he's playing Boba Fett because he wants an extra blaster for Crossfire. I think he should be playing Dengar. Dengar plus one of these guys is 4 ability. It allows, and then he can start playing Boba Fett Bounty Hunter.
Yeah.
He should be playing Bantha Fodder, which pulls Tusken Raider or Terran. The Tusken dude.
Right.
There should probably be a Gick in this deck. I think bad things are going to happen to these Tusken Raiders if there's not a Gick.
Like, I feel like the hidden weapons, while it's cute, like putting in a Gick and say like a masterful move, I feel like that would be really good. You have no way of pulling Search and Destroy.
You cannot hide forever.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think he's
Okay.
starting Power the Hut, Crossfire, and Jabba's Haven.
Well, I think he's playing the you cannot hide forever. and then
I think
you
if you
pulls
see like you
Crossfire.
have it 4, you don't start Crossfire. You cannot hide, and then you pick
Yeah.
it for Search and Destroy.
Yeah, that makes if you're playing against Yops, you would make that change.
Yeah.
And then you cannot hide forever actually does double duty because it can reduce Jedi's,
Yeah.
which could actually matter in this deck.
I love the creativity. I love the idea
Yeah.
Sure.
behind it. It definitely needs some tweaking just to take it from really fun idea to actually competitive. And I think it's what I think it's lacking is it doesn't activate a ton, and it's not necessarily draining a ton. Like your best case scenario with all your sites out, you're paying 12 to drain for 7 tops. And you have no way to go to space at all, which I don't hate. But you have no way to not ever pay for drains forever.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the plan is against something like a hidden base or, you know, anything that can just kind of ignore you on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, search
Just
and
no
destroy
terrain
only
you.
does so much. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, I think those are the 5 decks that we had for tonight, everybody. So I want to thank those who submitted the decks. Really quick, I think it's time we bring back a deck building challenge. So we have 5 decks tonight. The deck building challenge is I want you to go out and play with any of the 5 decks. I'll post this onto the forum. Any of the 5 decks that are played tonight. And win a game with them. It can be any type of game, as long as it is a tournament game. So open game, OCS, not retro, obviously, but any of the league games. If you win with it, you'll be entered in for a prize, and then we'll get you a prize. So I like that. And then before we go, we got one last thing to do, and that is the card challenge. So I'm going to show up a card on the screen, and you guys just need to tell me what the card underneath is.
It's Akref.
Oh shoot! How do I see that? I don't. I'm just in the Zoom. Or is this for the chat?
So I'll put the card up on the screen. That's for our viewers and everything. But I'm also going to I'll tell you what the card is. And I will say it is a card in one of the decks that was showed off tonight. Okay, so let's bring up the timer. You guys will be able to work together. So I'm going to need one answer from each of you. If one of you gets it, you both win the prize. Okay, your card is the Light Maker. Your 30 seconds start now. What's underneath the Light Maker?
isn't it a
Oh, Garrett, you're not. You're a co-host.
Liberty?
You can help them, or you can hinder them.
I have no idea.
Wow.
I thought it was a interrupt of some sort.
I'll give you a hint. With 5 seconds left, it is a blue card
Mhm.
from Special Edition. No, wait, no. I actually forgot which one it is from. From Death Star 2.
I'm gonna say Liberty. For some reason, that's just in the back of my head.
Okay. We got the Liberty as one. Eric?
I don't know, it's going to be a blue one, like, or oh wait a minute, that some blue ship.
The blue
I have no
is a
idea.
ship.
Diversified. Pick another one. Any blue card from Death Star 2.
Yeah.
The Masayana. I have no
That's
idea.
a good guess. Garrett, you know what? If you can Garrett, you get a guess too.
Well, I cheated and looked it up on Scomplink and did the reverse search because I honestly I was thinking it was one of the weird
Zeke, you're in the chat.
interrupts.
Zeke, if you can guess what it is, and here's the best part, it's on the screen. If you can guess what it is, Zeke, I'll give you, Ryan, and Eric a prize. I saw it. Which one though? Which one? I need this now. I need the specificness. Carl, you're not involved.
Is it the B-wing bomber?
It is the B-wing bomber.
Wow.
So,
I thought it was-
Zeke, the 3 of you get a prize. You guys will get something anyways, but so thank you all for coming on. It's been a great episode. I hope everybody watches it and gives everybody good feedback on the episode. I would love to do another one of these, so hopefully people enjoy it. Next week, however, we're going to be interviewing the Rallatier regional champion, Stefan DeVos. That's going to be a pre-recorded interview, but definitely going to be, we're going to get him on the air. And then, I think that's all we got tonight. So again, I want to thank Garrett, Eric, and Ryan for coming on. Garrett, we'll have you on as a co-host again sometime later. And then we'll have our 2 deck experts on maybe later on this year as well. So till next week, enjoy your weekend as always. Hope everybody's draws sixes, and as always, may the force be with you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.